So I just want to welcome everyone to today's event. I'm David Weinstein, the director of the Center on Japanese Economy and Business here at Columbia Business School, and the Carlos Shoup Professor of Economy at Columbia. We're delighted to welcome everyone here to today's event, The Secrets of Longevity, Pioneering Global Beauty with Over 150 Years of History. This event is part of CJEB's Japanese Management Leadership Program, or JMLP, which was created by Yumiko Shimabukuro and Ryoko Ogino of CJEB. Before turning the floor over to today's speaker, I just want to say a few words about the center for those of you who are new. It's established in 1986, and our mission is to promote knowledge and understanding of Japan's economy and its business systems in an international context. We're the only research center focusing on the Japanese economy and business systems within a university setting in North America, which makes us very special. So I'm also delighted to welcome back today's speaker, Masahiko Uotani, Chairman and CEO of Shiseido Company. We're privileged to have him here, and he's a 1983 alumnus of the Columbia Business School and is now a special advisor to the JMLP program that I mentioned before. He was here last year, and the event was a great opportunity for members of the Columbia community to learn from his wonderful career and work at Shiseido. And I always enjoy having Uotani-san here to share views and have lunch with. Since time is limited, I just want to say a few words of introduction. Uotani-san joined Shiseido in April of 2014 as the first president and CEO appointed from outside the company. So that's a very rare thing in Japan today. Since then, the company has experienced very rapid growth and has performed amazingly well under his leadership. Before joining Shiseido, Mr. Uotani had over 30 years of experience at Japanese and global FMCG companies, including 18 years in marketing and management at Coca-Cola Company in Japan. I think that was when I first met you. It was an event with Mr. Modi, another Columbia alum, who's the president, or at the time the president of Kikkoman Soy Sauce. Mr. Uotani's business priority is people first, which places employees at the core of the company's stakeholders. He led the establishment of Shiseido Future University, a facility created to develop the company's next leaders. His leadership and passion for diversity and equality also resulted in his serving on other roles, such as president of the Japan Cosmetic Industry Association and committee chair of diversity and inclusion at the Japan Business Federation. Before I pass the baton over to Mr. Uotani, I want to take a moment to thank our corporate and individual sponsors listed in the booklet that you have for their generous donations. These gifts enable us to host events like this. After Mr. Uotani's presentation, we'll have time for a brief question and answer period. So please, everyone, as you're listening, write down any questions you may have, and I'll try to get to as many people as I possibly can. I also have a few reminders. Please refrain from taking pictures or recording the slides or other visual content. And also, I'm going to ask everyone to silence their cell phones so we don't have any interruptions. And also, to the extent that you can, please put away laptops. I see a few laptops up there. We'd like to try to minimize use of electronics during the talk. So without any further ado, I want to turn the floor over to Uotani-san.
Thank you very much, Sensei. Okay. So, as David just introduced, and I'm class of 1983, and so I'm going to start with this picture. Okay. I was, I think this is just 1 month before the graduation, so I was 29 years old at the time. So it's always great to be back at the Columbia. And obviously, if I had not really come to Columbia, I wouldn't have done what I have done. So, thank you very much for the gathering. And I have a very bad habit in my presentations. I'm going to run over my time. So today, I'd like to have some time for you to ask questions and do a bit of interactive sessions. Therefore, I'm going to be very quick, okay, for my presentations. I first started working for a Japanese company called Lion because they had the education program of sending and sponsoring employees to go to the business schools in the U.S. Okay? And luckily, after 3 years of work, they sent me to Columbia. Actually, they gave me a right to go to the business school in the U.S., Europe, and wherever. And I had to really choose the school. Okay? Therefore, I sent 17 applications to the schools. Okay? And luckily, I really wanted to come to New York. And luckily, I was admitted to Columbia University Business School here. Okay? Then I, worked for 5 years after I went back, and then, changed my jobs, which was quite unusual at that time for the Japanese people. But when I ended up with, as it was introduced by David, Coke, 18 years, starting as a chief marketing officer and president and chairman, CEO of the Coke business. One of the things I really want to emphasize that the Coke is, shown by this picture, is I really met the great CEOs, 5 CEOs, there during my tenure in 18 years. And the first person was a Cuban. Obviously Coca-Cola is an American icon. Again, that was run by a CEO who's a Cuban. And then second person is an American who was CFO and promoted to CEO. And his tenure was quite short. And then third person was an Australian math teacher. He's obviously very good at numbers. And then, when he left for a certain reason, very suddenly he left, and he started living at a hotel in New York. And there was a vacancy, actually, quite many months. And finally, they ended up with getting someone, retired person, to come back, who used to be the president of Europe. That's the person, his picture there, called Neville Isdell. Actually, I really, learned a lot from him. I thought he's one of the best CEOs I ever worked with. He listened to people, and he organized the whole organizations to work into one direction. He came up with a strategic plan called Manifesto for Growth. And then company started really growing again. And then when he retired after 4 years, he appointed, actually board appointed, Turkish person to be the CEO. You may know, Muta. So diversity. Unfortunately, there was no woman yet. I had to say yet again. But different backgrounds of nationalities like that. So diversity was a key for this company. After I retired from Coca-Cola, I started a small kind of business with my friends to inspire Japanese company CEOs to be more global based on marketing kind of expertise. And one day I had a call from a Shiseido president at that time asking me to become an advisor. So I said, Shiseido is going to be my client. Went there, accepted that, started working with them. After 6 months, 2 external board members came to talk to me and said, well, because the business is not really doing well, Shiseido was a bit in trouble because 6 years of a decline of sales profit. So with a strong sense of urgency, we decided to do something very unusual for a traditional Japanese company. We are going to appoint somebody from outside to be CEO. Wow, 16th, they had never done it in 140-year history. And my reaction is, wow, if this company, okay, the very traditional Japanese company, icon of Japan, okay, is now appointing somebody from outside. It's gonna really the symbol of the change of Japan. Okay? So my reaction is, wow, that's great. Who is it? They said, it's you. Yeah? That's how it started. Okay? And I thought, after having experienced the Japanese company in the business school in New York and global company like Coke, oh, this is something that God is giving me. It's a calling for me. Okay? That's how I started at Shiseido in 2014. And the company has a long history, 152 years now, okay? And operating in 120 countries and having nearly 40,000 employees. Yeah. When that was offered to me, I couldn't say yes immediately because I knew how challenging it was. Okay? It's not going to be easy to change an older company. Okay? But I thought this is worth doing that. Okay? And as I said, it is my true calling. Okay? And I made up my mind with the Japanese language. You're going to see some of the Japanese terminologies today, okay? And so non-Japanese, people who are not familiar with the language, may remember K-A-K-U-G or kakugo. Okay? It is a very strong determination. You're making up your mind. Okay? In all the days, samurai days, okay, when they promise something with kakugo, and if they are not going to make it happen, they have to kill themselves. Okay? So I thought, okay, as a president, okay, CEO, okay, if I'm not successful, I'm going to resign, taking responsibility. Yeah, that was my kakugo. I had two missions in my mind. One is to make Shiseido a true global company. Usually, when you say a true global company, the definition is what percentage of the business is done outside of Japan. Okay? If it's exceeding 50%, you are classified, you're becoming a global company. But that's not what I meant at that time. Yeah, I don't care the numbers. Yeah. But I thought culture of diversity, getting a lot of people who have different backgrounds coming to work to create one culture, international kind of culture. That's what I call global company. Okay? That's what I wanted to make Shiseido like that. And the second one is, when you are becoming CEO, succeeding the company that has a 140-year history, what's your role? You're going to turn around quickly in 2 years, and then you have a great triumph, and then get a big bonus and go. No, I didn't like it. Okay? I have to make sure this company is going to strengthen the foundation so that it can go another 100 years, okay? And more. With those two commitments, okay, I started working. First, I went to talk to people, okay, on the ground, front lines. Okay. When there is a bit of issue, okay, in performance of the company, you don't want to necessarily talk to an analyst, okay, and the people, investors. Okay. They all obviously do analysis, but the reality of the business is existing in the markets. Okay? And in our case, business model has a lot of people, like over 10,000 people in Japan, okay, meeting our customers every day, and beauty advisors in the stores. Okay? So they are the ones who know what's going on, what's not done. Okay? So I went to talk to them. First, I'm newly appointed from outside, okay? And the president coming to talk to people in the stores, like this, that kind of picture. If I say to them, now I'm becoming your president, CEO, I'm here today to ask you what are the strategic issues we are facing. I'm sorry, this is not a business school, okay? Right? This is we call it gemba in Japanese terminology, gemba, okay, front lines. Okay. So I had to really, to be connected with them. How would you do that as a leader? Okay? people would see me, okay, see the leader up over here, okay? And you have to really close the gap, okay? By using the terminologies, by using the words they understand, asking them relevant questions. Okay? Something like, okay, how many people how many clients do you really meet every day? Okay, what are the things that you think you want to do, but you are not able to do, you are not able to deliver? What are the issues you're facing? Okay? With those kind of casual ways of discussions, asking questions, okay, first we have to make them open their mind. Okay? When I show my attitude to listen to them. And with a bit of a sense of humor, you need to get them really open their minds and then start talking. Then they started talking about some of the strategic issues, actually. In this case, she said, "Oh, we don't have enough product samples for our customers to try." In this kind of what we call prestige beauty business, you need samples for the potential customers to try. Because it's a bit of an investment of $200 actually to buy a product. It's not cheap. So I asked why. Well, the budget is controlled by headquarters in Tokyo. What? And this is a business dealing with so many millions of consumers every day, but budget for the promotional items is controlled by someone in head office. And we make a request. And we don't really get it necessarily. We have to wait a long time, and sometimes the quantity of the samples we ask for is cut down to 1/3 of what we need. Okay? So, I called someone who is controlling it in the headquarters, and they asked them, "Why are you not really getting them in a budget? Why are you really controlling centrally?" Okay? And then here's a very serious issue. Culture issue of the company, organization. He said, "Oh, we don't get the money because we don't trust them. They're going to really waste the money we give them. Yeah, they're going to not using up all the samples that we give them." So this is a big issue. Yeah? It's a bit of small kind of obviously phenomenon you see in the market, but it really includes significant issues. First, marketing strategy issues, where you're going to spend money. The second, cultural issue, internal trust. That's how I started working and went to talk to people. So far, I think I have spoken to almost 90,000 kind of people. Then I thought everybody should be going the same direction because people were sitting in the silos. Organizationally, were all over the places. Okay? And based on that, we came up with an idea called People First. Okay? Who is going to make mission really reality? That's our people. Okay? Among many stakeholders, these days, it's called multi-stakeholder capitalism. Okay? When I was at Columbia in 1981, okay, those days, if you talk to CEOs of the big companies, who are coming to visit our campus on the time, they all said, "We exist for the shareholders. Shareholders, period. Don't even think about other stakeholders." Coming from Japan, where we usually say the company is owned by the employees of the company, not necessarily shareholders, particularly those days, I was not comfortable to hear we exist for the shareholders only. Okay? Milton Friedman did a very good job in that sense in the 1980s, and all the CEOs had no doubt about that. Okay? And then these days, as you know, when they have changed it, multi-stakeholder kind of capitalism, and multi-stakeholders, including your people, your employees, customers, community, and shareholders. So I came up with this idea, People First, because all of the work, developing connections with our consumers is done by our people. By the way, I don't call them employees necessarily. I really prefer to call people, because if I define they are our employees, that suggests I'm employer, right? I'm an employer, you are my employees. Okay? That's the kind of relationship. I don't like that. We are in the same family, okay? Working together to deliver the value, okay? We have just mentioned. Okay? So we are together, people. Okay? They have their families, their friends, and it is a community. Okay? The reason I call people first is they are the ones who have to start with. We have to start with. Okay? And then when they understand what is the goal and the mission, okay? What is the business goals, then they are the ones who come up with ideas for innovations, products and services, strategies and executions, and then we can deliver that to our consumers, who is existing in the society, okay? And that gives a benefit to our retail partners and the suppliers, okay? Business partners. Okay? As a result of that, we can grow our sales and profit, okay? Financial numbers. Then, we are going to share the value with our shareholders. I'm not saying shareholders are not important. It is very important stakeholders, but it doesn't come first. This is the kind of sequence we want to build. And by the way, if a CEO, gets a bit of crazy, no, I don't care people, I don't care society. I'm going to just trying to be nice with the shareholders because they're going to be approve my big bonus. So corporate governance, that's really watching me not to be behaving like that. Okay? So that's why we need a proper corporate governance in place. Okay? And then business started growing after many years of decline. Okay? It was obviously disrupted by COVID in 2020, but there's been growth, sustainable growth of sales and profit. Okay? Actually, much faster than we thought in the beginning. Okay? So the targets were achieved 3 years, 2 years in advance. So I call it the powerful people, and who have a diverse background. Diversity is really power. Okay? Just as diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay? And that's so necessary for us to get the organization really energized and to grow the business, deliver the company values. So, I want to really start talking a little bit about the diversity. Okay? Guess what? This is the New Year gathering of Japanese business leaders. I took this picture myself from the back. You know what I mean, right? This is the reality in Japan. Although, all the companies, major companies are saying that they are going to promote the diversity internally, promoting women, promoting non-Japanese people. Okay? But still, today, reality is like this. So we are far behind. Gender gap index in Davos, okay? Japan ranks 118th for the country, which is a third or fourth biggest GDP country. It is a shame. We have to do something quickly. Okay? I want to really share with you my personal kind of story a little bit. Okay? I'm now 70. Okay? You have to doubt it. Okay? My health kind of machine tells me I'm still physically 50. Okay? But actually, 70 years ago, only 70 years ago, okay? Before I was born, I'm going to tell you a story. Okay? My mother, was a kind of a trainee to become a nurse, okay? And she met a guy, and they were going to get married. But that was not approved by my father's family, which is a very conservative kind of family at that time, living in a bit of rural place. Okay? Because she's a working woman. She had a job. So marriage was not approved. And they actually eloped. They left the family and got married without any kind of wedding ceremonies and parties. And then I was born. Okay? But if you think about it, only 70 years ago, okay, that was the case. Women were not given the freedom. Okay? Just a story my mother told me when I was a high school student in the night, with a bit of tears. Okay? So I thought, I should be doing something in the future to get the Japanese women more freedom. Okay. So at the Shiseido, after I took over, I've been really working on the diversity, equity, inclusion kind of initiatives, promoting women, not only just in the U.S. and the European kind of countries, but also in Japan. Japan is facing a serious issue. Today, 45% of our board are women. He has one, Anna-san, who is representing our board today, and 35% of the global leadership team are women. 40%, today it's more than 40%, it's 42% of our domestic Japanese organization managers are women. I put a goal, 50%, because it's an equal number, 50-50. That should be, should be achieved in 2-3 years. And 35% of our, global leadership team is non-Japanese. Ronji, who is the region CEO of the Americas. And in order for us to make it really work, to become a true global company, I think, how many Japanese people we have here today? Okay. One serious issue is language, proficiency of English. People who are coming here, obviously, they're fluent, and getting admitted to business schools in the U.S., but, it's very few. Even the business leaders in the picture you saw, they can understand, they can read, but they are not proactively using English in their communications. So at the Shiseido, we changed our official language in the headquarters in Tokyo to English 6 years ago. And in the beginning, there was a bit of a trial time. I pushed everybody because on average, everybody learns English 8 years. And they are very good at the grammars. Then I asked everybody to present, when they had to propose ideas to the management meetings in speaking English. So some of them stood in front of us and said, well, I'm not good at speaking English, therefore I will be presenting in Japanese. Very good English. So they can do that. Mindset is more or less a big problem, hesitating and shy. So by changing the language environment, and actually when I asked people in Tokyo, okay, if we are changing the official language to English, and I want everybody to be fluent in English, in addition to the original language, Japanese, for the case of Japanese people. And I want to really support, for you to be learning English, having a berries coming to work for us. How many people, are going to really go to the school like berries? 3,000 Japanese people in our organization raised their hands. They started learning. So today, our meetings are done, basically in English in Tokyo. I talked about diversity inclusion at the Shiseido, but I want to really showcase the other Japanese big companies. So I became a chair of the 30% Club. As you may know, this is a club started in UK some years ago to promote a diversity of gender. So Japan is the 14th country where we have this organization. I'm a chair of this, and then those big blue chip Japanese companies are the members. So we are seriously now working on the diversity. At the same time, in Japan, there is a civil law that is requesting a married couple to choose either husband's or wife's name. So you have a freedom to choose, but you don't have a freedom to keep both. And 95% of married couples are choosing husband's names, which means women who are building their career up to the age they get married, they have to abandon it, their name. So actually, United Nations is telling Japan, okay, it's discrimination of women. Okay? Japan has to change. But this law was created in 1947, almost 80 years ago, when women didn't work a lot. Okay? Those days, today, 80% of Japanese women have work, their jobs. Okay? We have to change. So, as a chairman of a diversity committee of Keidanren, which is Japan Business Federation, we made a plea and went to talk to politicians to change the law. Okay? That's one of the hottest kind of topics among Japanese politicians now. I hope this is going to happen in the next 6 months or so. Okay? So, a bit of a conclusion of my leadership kind of a model. Okay, as I said, open your mind, and then listen to others, and that's so important. People in the leading positions, CEOs, tended to talk a lot. Okay? But we have to listen. Okay? It should be interactive. Okay? So then, other parties, other people, are going to open their mind and talk to us. Okay? But we tended to be just speaking and without really, listening to other people. Okay? And one of the important value I want to really emphasize is integrity. Okay? Integrity. When you're running a business, there are so many, issues you face every day. Okay? Some, in our case, product quality issue may take place. Okay? You don't want to really make it public. I mean, it's going to be very embarrassing. But you have to protect your, clients, customers, society. Then you have to, take a courage to make it open, based on the integrity. What's right, not for the company, okay? No, but what's right for the society? What's right for the world? What's right for our important customers? That should be coming first. Integrity and trust and empowerment is my principle. We need to build brand values. Okay? Brand value is accumulation of trust from our consumers, from our customers. In order for us to be trusted by our customers, okay, we have to, create our trust internally in our company. Okay? And CEOs want to be trusted by our people. Okay? But if you were not behaving, okay, that way, okay, people don't trust, people don't want to talk to you. Okay? So it's a mutual kind of relationship. You have to trust your people. Then you're going to be trusted. Okay? So that's the way we making sure to be trusted, to trusting each other among the organizations. Okay? And then once there is a trust, okay, you want to empower people. Okay? Here's our region CEO, okay, who is taking care of the whole North American and South American markets. He knows obviously everything much better than me. Now, how can I really tell him what to do? No way. I trust him, and he's completely empowered. But there is one kind of promise actually we have. When there is a bad news, I'm asking Ron to be, standing up and openly tell me, even if he thinks it's embarrassing. Okay? Don't hide, don't hold it. Yeah? We have to be, clear what are the issues we're facing, what are the problems, and we have to work together to solve it. Yeah? So, bad news first, yeah, is a very important, part of the relationship, to build a trust each other. Now, I'd like to really come to the end of my presentation by emphasizing what is ikigai. Okay? This is the Japanese terminology, ikigai, but that's becoming now universal. I think a French person wrote a book some years ago about ikigai, which is in Japan. There is no equivalent word in English or in French. Okay? Ikigai means, okay, it's something that you make the most of your life. Why you exist for. Same for the company mission. Okay? Your life, so precious. why you have your life for, what you are trying to achieve. That's so important. Okay? Let me just tell you my ikigai from now on. I'm retiring end of this month from CEO and chairman, and then I'm going to become an advisor, but focusing on people's development. We created a university internally, Shiseido Future University, where you can see this is located in the founding place in Ginza, Tokyo, center of Tokyo. Okay? And we get the people around the world to come here and work together, and touching upon the heritage. We have a display of the products from 150 years ago, okay? And some signage from 100 years ago. All of the heritage kind of examples are displayed there, so people can touch it, feel it, then come up with the direction for the future. Okay? Heritage can get you the ideas what you are going to build for the future. Okay? This is a place. As I said, people first tells us, people are the ones who are going to drive the growth. People are the ones who are going to change the world. Okay? So, when you take a look at the P&L, people are defined as cost, or sometimes expenses. Are the people expense? Right? It's an asset. It's a capital. Right? When you make an investment in, let's say, plants, okay, $200 million of new plants, okay, you see that as a capital investment. It's called a capital investment, and you calculate how much you're going to invest, how you're going to invest, and how you're going to really see the returns of that. Okay? But when you take a look at people, okay, you just see in PLA, it's a cost, it's a fixed cost, normally called, okay? And then you're going to cut 20% of that. How are we going to really do that? It is an asset. You have to invest. It is a place, and you have to really make sure you have a quality of people who are sharing the value, okay, with everybody else in the organization, and sharing the mission and going together to the next stage. Okay? So my strong belief is that we have to see people as a human capital. Okay? Therefore, we have to invest like this. And to conclude my presentation, he's saying to me, okay, I have only 1 minute, okay? So I have to conclude quickly. My experience at Columbia Business School. When I came here in 1981, I was struck, first, by diversity of students. Almost 30% of my classmates are women. It was not the case in Japan at all. Therefore, it was eye-opening. And more than 30 kind of nationalities are there. Yeah? Very international kind of background, which I really enjoyed. Yeah? And by the way, my classmates, Susan and Peggy, are all telling me I was trained by them at that time. Yeah? To become a bit of a champion in the Japanese business community for diversity. Yeah? So great experience, great learning here. And then also the style of education is completely different. Those days in Japan, the colleges were giving only lectures, were taking notes and taking tests. That's it. No debate, no discussion, no presentation. Okay? So coming here, I was obviously having a very tough time to go through the case studies. Particularly, I was majoring in marketing. So many cases, written by Harvard professors, and therefore, this is the way I lived. Okay? I studied, and I decided I have to really, make a contribution. Yeah. Therefore, probably one of the ways is to, when the professor comes and start the class discussions, he usually or she usually asks, "What is the problem of this company?" Yeah. So I have to raise my hand first. That's how I had prepared. And when I left my flat, I always put in the music of Rocky. Okay? Today I'm going. Okay? But it is very challenging. Therefore, I thought I should be doing something to transform myself to be much more proactive in the classroom discussions. Okay? It is not simply an English issue. It is more than just a language issue. So I took a special program at the Dale Carnegie School in Manhattan during night, 2 days a night, 2 days a week or so. I had 10 students together with me, all Americans. And after 4 months of practicing, okay, and the very good instructor said to us, okay, you all came here to train the communication skills, okay, but it's not a matter of technique. Okay? Because of the communication skill, you want to become a leader. You want to have a really good rich communication with your people to work with you. Okay? So you are developing a leadership. Okay? So you need a strong communication capabilities, but it's not a technique. At the end, he said, it is a matter of how you live your life. When you live your life enthusiastically, with passion, okay, people are coming to work with you. That's a big learning for me. Okay? And then I came back to the business school, and then I was able to really, raise my hands and making mistakes. That's okay. I'm not a native speaker of English. I just, gave my ideas to the classroom, okay? And that was my value existing there. Right? That's what you do every day. Okay? So, I just want to conclude my presentation to deliver a bit of message, again, you at the business school. You may seek for some, new careers or existing careers that you're going to continue after the graduation, but your leadership development is already starting here when you are in the business school, when you're in the school, when you are students. Okay? Okay? So don't waste your time, okay? And be yourself. Okay? And be confident you can do it. Thank you very much.